There are 308 ETFs currently listed on the ASX, and 29 of them are from Vanguard. And since Vanguard is one of the most popular fund managers for ETFs, let's find out which of those ETFs has performed the best. I'm going to look at who has had the highest return over 1 year, over 5 years, and of course, I'm also going to be looking at who has the highest dividends over the past 12 months. Because of course, I just adore those sweet dividends. So the most obvious disclaimer, I am not affiliated with Vanguard. I'm just choosing them because they're the most popular fund manager right now, and I'm happy to do other fund managers in the future. I actually prefer not doing sponsorships or paid partnerships or anything like that, so I can keep my research bias free. So let's jump in and see which ETFs have done the best over the past 12 months, over the past 5 years, and of course those dividends. From the top 3 of the highest performing price growth over the last 1 year and 5 years, it's the same 3 ETFs, although in a little bit different order. So the ETFs were VESG, VTS, and VGS. So let's briefly look at them before we move on to dividends. So VESG is Vanguard's Ethically Conscious International Shares ETF. It increased 16.96% over the past year and over 70% over the last 5 years. It also pays a small distribution or dividend of 1.79%, and the management fees are average for an actively managed fund at 0.18%. Now they hold over 1,500 companies, with the top holdings being Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. The next highest was VTS, which is Vanguard's US Total Market ETF. It had a return of 14.52% over 1 year and 83.19% over 5 years. But it was the highest over the 5-year period. So VTS has very small fees at 0.03% since it just tracks the total market. So of course it holds a lot of companies, over 3,700, with the top holdings being the same as VESG, being Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. And it also pays a 1.23% annual distribution. So the third highest was VGS. That's Vanguard's MSCI Index International Shares ETF. It had a 1-year return of 13.86% and a 5-year return of 83.19%. It has a distribution yield of 2.13%, which is actually pretty good for a growth ETF. And it has the same management fees as VESG at 0.18%. It holds over 1,400 companies. And guess what the top companies it holds are? Yep, it's Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. Because these 3 hold similar companies and they all hold Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon as their top 3 holdings, you probably wouldn't want to hold all 3 of these ETFs because you get a lot of crossover. So if you were going to look at any of these ETFs, just choose your favorite. So let's move on to dividends. So the top 3 were VVLU, VHY, and VLC. So let's look at those. So in the top place with the highest dividend yield over the last 12 months, we've got VVLU, which is Vanguard's Global Equity Active ETF. It has a 6% distribution yield. It also has a pretty good 1 and 5 year price return with 4.97% over 1 year and a 35.56% increase over 5 years. Now their management fees are 0.28%. They pay quarterly, but they're not franked since that pertains to Australian companies. It's also worth noting that Commsec is showing a much lower distribution yield than market index was, and that's probably because the last 2 payments of dividends have been much higher than average, and so Commsec is just using the average, which is a lot lower and will probably fall again in the future. They hold 790 companies, with their top holdings being Centene Corp, AT&T, and CVS. Now the next highest was VHY, Vanguard's Australian Shares High Yield ETF. It has a distribution yield of 5.14%. It's been down 1.74% over the past year and an increase of 22.98% over the last 5 years, which is pretty close to the ASX 200 overall. And you got to remember that the Australian market is going to have different returns to the global market or to the US market. So with VHY, the management fees are 0.25%. They pay quarterly, and they're usually franked at about 89%. They hold 76 companies, with the top holdings being BHP, CBA, and NAB. And the third highest dividend paying company of the last 12 months is VLC, which is Vanguard's MSCI Australian Large Companies Index, and their yield is 5.11%. Now their returns, like VHY, are very much in line with the ASX 200, with the 1-year return being down 1.17% and the 5-year return being 22.14%. And their management fees are 0.2%. They pay quarterly, with franking usually over 91%, and they currently hold 19 companies, with the top holdings being BHP, CBA, and CSL. So I'm going to put all the information and figures down in the description, so it's just easy for you if you want to grab it and it's fine if you don't. But do be aware that financials change all the time because the price is changing all the time. So what should you do with this information? This is going to depend where you're buying for growth, for the price growth over time, or you're buying for the income, for the distribution yield. So obviously that's going to influence the types of ETFs that you're looking for. And of course, there's many good ETFs that have both growth and income. So don't think you have to choose one over the other. But this should give you a good jumping off point, or just give you some information that you wanted to know perhaps. And I was interested, so I thought I'd go and do the research so you don't have to. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Happy investing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.